raise my hand.
Once we stop filming, we'll see if everyone can get a full farming experience. All right, welcome everyone. Look, I'll start with just a couple of introductory comments because we do have an announcement that we'd like to make here today. I'll start just to give a little bit of context, and then I'll have Damien O'Connor give a bit more detail on that announcement. I think it's fair to say that over a number of years, the expectation and the work that our farmers and our farm managers are having to do across issues like biosecurity, across health and safety, across water quality, and of course in the future the work around climate change does create a range of expectations that they're needing to meet, particularly through regional councils. Our view is that there is a way to simplify all of those expectations. We have seen processes developing in conjunction with our farming leaders, the use of farm plans. Our view is that they, in the future, can be used as a tool to remove a huge amount of administrative burden for our farming community. It means that in the future we should be able to remove some of the consenting processes by having integrated farm plans. It's something that the likes of RNZ, Federated Farmers, other farming leaders have called for as a tool to make the job of farming and meeting those expectations that much easier. They're already being used. It's now our job to make sure that we integrate the work we're doing at a government and local government level into these farm plans. To talk a little bit more about how we intend to resource that, I'll hand over to Damien O'Connor.
Kia ora, and thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister, and thanks to all the people on the farm here for hosting us, and for the calves for keeping quiet. We're on a wonderful farm here, and like many here in the Waikato and all around the country, busy getting on with their day-to-day work. And we have as a government come in with a couple of mandates, and one is to help the farming sector move forward, to get more for what they do, not just ask them to do more. And there have been requirements around freshwater, around animal welfare that we've been working with the farmers to improve. And some of that, of course, comes with a cost, with a regulatory burden, and depending on where the farmers are in terms of their cycle of developing a farm plan, where the regional council is, there are different levels of capability and capacity. And so we are announcing today $50 million to go towards the development of integrated farm plans throughout New Zealand. We will be working with farmers, with the regional councils, and with officials who are working through things like freshwater standards and regulations to make sure, firstly, we have practical and implementable proposals, but that also that the farmers get assistance through expertise in both councils and independent farm advisors to help them develop a farm plan that will reduce their requirement to have resource consents in many places. We went to Southland last week, David Parker and I, and we agreed with the Southland Environment Southland, with Federated Farmers, Beef and Lamb, Dairy NZ, that would sit around a table and work on implementation of our freshwater standards. Now that will require some resource. Environment Southland is well up to speed with it, but there'll be other councils around the country that need to get some assistance. So the $50 million that we're announcing today will be for the development of those integrated farm plans that will assist farmers get through all the requirements that they now face. Health and safety, biosecurity, animal welfare, all of those things are now a requirement on farm. Some see it as a bit of a burden, but actually, if you come to a farming operation like this, most of those things will be covered with the existing farm plan. So we want to use the resource to share that knowledge between farms, between councils, and between farm advisors. So I look forward to, with my colleagues, with the regional councils, to working out where we'll spend that money, on a day-to-day basis.
Is this an acknowledgement that those freshwater reforms are too onerous?
No, they're not too onerous. I think that working out how to implement that on each and every farm is something that we can't write from Wellington, and that's why we want to put the resource on the ground to help people, because every single farm plan will be different, and it's impossible for us to write those farm plans from Wellington. We do set the bottom lines, and that's what we've done.
Over the past year as well, at least, we have had within that farming leadership group that we've been working alongside a real call from them to say, look, these are tools that we are using on farm already. Many farms, for instance, who are operating with Fonterra will often already have those farm plans through that relationship. The question has been, how can we integrate some of this more recent work around water, for instance, into those existing farm plans?
Will it help those smaller farms? I mean, the bigger operations presumably have more resource. But is that the level
It'll help everyone. I mean, if we can create a process that says actually for winter grazing issues you don't need to go through a separate consenting process, it can all be integrated within your farm plan, and that can also cover off a range of other different issues you're already having to deal with, be it health and safety, be it biosecurity.
I mean, farmers have a wonderful way of sharing knowledge and information. They call them discussion groups or field days, but they require some resource to set up. And so what we'll be doing is helping those forums to be set up and where farmers can share that knowledge.
Traditionally, farmers aren't labour supporters. Do you think announcements like this today will change any voters' minds?
I think regardless, actually, this is the right thing to do. You know, I remember last election having this debate often. My view is that, this is the backbone of our export market. There are huge challenges we're facing. We need to continue to show that we are operating sustainably, that we have regenerative farming practice, and that is happening. Now our job is to support the community with some of the new asks that exist and just strip away some of the red tape and make it as easy as possible.
What do you say to farmers who think that labour isn't farming friendly?
I've always rejected that, just as I've always rejected this idea that they aren't mindful of the environment. They're working the land every day. Often it will be generational. It will be land that's been within their family that they are committed to. My view is we've got the same goal. It's just about how we get there.
Are the plans changes too sudden for farms to adjust to?
No, look, not at all. I think many of the farmers who will be supplying Fonterra, Sinlay, Miraka, Silverfern farms, they will all have to have farm plans in their drawer already. And so for many, it will just be business as usual, although the requirements and the bottom lines that we're putting in place with freshwater will require them to bring those plans out and to update them. And I think that's where we're providing the resource to allow them to update their farm plans. Many farmers are already in the space. Sorry?
No, that's exactly what it's working to avoid. You know, our view is that this is an opportunity to use something that's already a really important tool on farm to remove duplication and even remove some of the consenting process that farmers might already be experiencing. You know, this is something that the sector's been asking for, and what we're saying is we totally agree. Now let's invest in it and make it happen.
We have been working for the last 2 years within MPI to try and develop a template that takes the best practice from each of those farm plans around the country and puts it into something that most farmers can look at, digest and actually implement.
How do you feel the day after the...
If you form the next government, what is your plan for farming? What will farming look like in 3 years?
Look, we've laid out a plan through Fit for a Better World that Lane Jager has led through the Primary Sector Council. We want to get farmers to get more for what they do, not just to do more. This is a perfect example, this operation here, of the value they're getting from the milk of this farm, and right into the marketplace. We can replicate that around the country. Fonterra already focusing on higher value in the marketplace. We think that farming will evolve, but we won't necessarily see the massive increase in production. We want to see the increase in profit for farms.
How are you feeling the day after the debate, back on the campaign trail?
Yeah, good. Actually, last night I achieved exactly what I wanted to achieve, which was to get out our plan, to give voters for that first debate the chance to hear about our policies and ideas for the future. You know, this is a time where people are looking for that certainty. What is our recovery and rebuild plan look like? And that's what I believe I achieved.
Have you commented that you appeared a bit flat? Do you agree with that? Or what
Oh,
would you say?
no, I felt pretty invigorated out there actually. So no, I didn't feel that way at all. But what I would say is, you know, this is one of 4. I think probably over the course of the debates, no one will be left in any question as to our style, the leadership we bring and the ideas we have. And that's the whole purpose.
One of the questions was last night you didn't really speak to Māori voters. Do you think you'll look to address that in future debates?
Yeah, and look, I think often we are, of course, you know, speaking to the subject matter that's brought to us. I would welcome the chance to delve a little more deeply into some of those issues. I do think that's where you'll see significant contrast between Labour and National. I'm very proud of the work we've done to invest in kohanga reo, to increase our te reo teachers in schools, to support whānau order. And in fact, I'd love the opportunity to spend a little more time talking about them.
Judith Collins.
Fair enough, I think this was one of those big ticket things last election, really boasting this big Māori caucus, yet Māori wasn't mentioned at all last night. Do you think that should be part of the policies that you were trying to showcase to the country?
Yeah, to say I would, welcome the chance to showcase those policies because I'm proud of them. What we've invested into kohanga reo was a long time coming. The whānau order investment, actually, you look at the work whānau order have done during COVID-19, it has been exceptional. And for the future of Oranga Tamariki, some of those partnerships that are now being dealt with through whānau order, I think will be a model for the future. So I would welcome that debate, and I think we'd see big contrast between parties.
Judith Collins.
If you can't handle the blood sport, you should go foreign.
Oh, yeah. I think actually my expression there was just simply saying, actually, when it comes to the debates, I'm not sure that that's what voters are looking for. So, look, whatever the nature of those debates are, we'll take them as they come. But ultimately, I went in with an approach that I wanted people to hear our policies, what our plan is, and that's what I did.
Judith
Claiming the
Collins.
win, did you lose that debate?
Oh, actually, you'll find from the debates since 2017, I've never made assumptions about the outcomes of debates, either way, no matter what commentators have said. In fact, my recollection is in 2017, it got called my way, and I wasn't even sure I agreed with that. So I've always left it up to voters to decide.
Judith Collins is meeting a man today with a tattoo of her on his thigh. Have you been presented with a tattoo of yourself on anyone?
Body part. Or do you mean specifically a thigh?
Not specifically
Okay.
a thigh, any body part.
I believe the tattooist is from Morrinsville, actually, so I probably know them in some way. Not at all, no. Look, if he's getting business out of tattooing politicians, then fantastic. Personally, I would never encourage anyone necessarily to have politicians tattooed on themselves. I feel like that's a risky place to go.
Not a bar that you're hoping to meet.
No, I would never encourage anyone to tattoo me on their person, thigh or anywhere else.
The Aussies are flying unusual version
Yes.
of the New Zealand flag on the RNZ bridge.
Yes.
Are you disappointed in that?
I think actually, to be honest, I'm probably a bit more disappointed that they will not concede on Crowded House. They're very defensive still about Pavlova. I think if we're looking for debate, flags probably are the ones that we find least offensive. I haven't seen what's been flown, so I haven't seen how bad a mistake has been made, but I'm sure they'll fix it.
So have a referendum on finding a new flag?
Well, obviously we've already been there. I think $26 million to come up with a stalemate was quite enough.
Prime Minister, are you trying to claim Pavlova as a Kiwi?
If we're going to reignite that debate, yes, I am.
Strawberry growers, which is strawberry, but of a different topic. Strawberry growers are saying they just can't get enough workers and they're really struggling
Yeah.
at the moment. Are you recapping them by not allowing them to have seasonal workers?
No, not at all. In fact, you will have heard me talk about some of those areas where we have needed to take extra initiatives to find workforce. MPI, for instance, during kiwifruit harvesting, worked really proactively to try and redeploy workforce where we'd seen job loss to make sure that we were then supplying a workforce into those areas where there was shortage. That's the kind of initiatives we want to see. We do have Kiwis without work right now. This is a prime area for us to work together to supply that workforce.
One grower that we've talked to said that they would be prepared to pay for all the costs associated, including health checks and security
Yep.
and accommodation. Is that something that you would consider?
Well, this is an area again, I'd say, piling all of that into supporting finding that New Zealand workforce as well would probably go a long way to finding those pickers. And we've seen that, for instance, kiwifruit. Traditionally, quite a low percentage of their workforce were New Zealanders. They lifted that right up this season. They paid good wages. We engaged in helping provide training, and we made it work. But also,
I mean, yesterday we made changes to the working holiday visas so that people who are in New Zealand now have been constricted in what they can do. They've lost their jobs in tourism. They can now move around the country to places like horticultural areas where there is a shortage. So that's about 11,000 people that we estimate at this point who can move into those jobs.
Same plea from sheep farmers for shearers. They're saying that they're a group that haven't been included in the recent categories and could potentially create an animal welfare issue come January, February. Is that something that you would look at to fill that gap?
When it comes to shearers, it's fair to say that's an area where we're still working through some of those issues. We do have a population that will sometimes move offshore into Australia and be part of shearing gangs there. And so that's something that Minister O'Connor is still working through. So we haven't yet concluded the way to overcome some of those
it's
issues.
Not a straight no, that is still a work in progress.
I mean, there's time between now and January, and obviously Minister Woods is working through, prioritisation and quarantine. So we need to know that if we say yes, that there is a realistic chance that they can come. But it's along with other skilled areas of workforce in the the agricultural area we're looking at it.
So yesterday you will have seen that we have exemptions for heavy machinery operators who are working across horticulture. We've also got several hundred workers for our fishing industry, where that's just a workforce that can't operate the vessels otherwise. So we are working with and veterinarians, so obviously a critical shortage in animal welfare issues there. So we are working closely with industry, identifying those needs and making capacity. Take a last couple.
Nationals claiming that last night you said that farming is a world of the past.
No. Absolutely, that is absolutely not what I said. I said Judith Collins' view of the challenges around climate change were views of the past, and that actually the farming community or leaders that I've been working with are very much focused on how can we drive further value from what we do and make sure we are competitive in our export markets. So my view is she was presenting an old view of farming.
Is Hamilton East a bellwether seat?
It's changed a lot over the years. Certainly in the past it's been characterised in that way. I think it's fair to say in MMP we haven't fixated quite so much on seats in that way. However, of course, we have high expectations of all our candidates to work really hard in their seats, and they do.
Do you think National Committee has come out a few times and said that he wants to be the Minister of Health come the new government? Have you had that conversation with Minister Hamilton?
No. In fact, I haven't discussed with any of our current ministers what roles would look like after an election, in part because actually their job right now is to work very hard to be ministers, and everything that comes thereafter is decided by voters.
On national issues that have been with Waikato University recently, do you think that there is structural racism there? Is that something that you've been keeping an eye on?
I think it's fair to say that across education generally, we have been talking and working as a government to make sure that we have no barrier to every young person achieving to their full potential. And there has been acknowledgement there are issues within our education system across the board, and I would not single out tertiary versus secondary versus primary. This is something we have to deal with generally.
Given Nationals polling, do you think that it's likely they'll lose some electorate seats?
Oh, look, certainly that's what we're working very hard for. And we have candidates, I think, that have earned the right to be elected as the local MPs. They've worked very hard. And so that's, of course, what we're working for this election. I would put Jamie Strange amongst those.
Which electorates are you eyeing up as potential?
Actually, I don't. Every seat we work hard for. But actually, there are some that have, of course, been marginal. And with enough hard work through this election, we would hope to have won through good hard work. All right, we'll finish up there. Thanks, everyone.